I always thought my life with Clara was a quiet masterpiece, a painting of muted colors that somehow worked together. We'd been married for 12 years, living in a modest house on the edge of a sleepy town where the biggest scandal was Mrs. Peterson's cat stealing laundry from clotheslines. Clara was my anchor, soft-spoken, with hazel eyes that crinkled when she laughed, and a habit of humming old jazz tunes while she cooked. I worked as a mechanic, hands stained with grease, while she taught piano to kids who'd rather be anywhere else. It wasn't glamorous, but it was ours. That spring, though, something shifted. I couldn't pinpoint it at first, like a faint crack in a windshield you don't notice until the light hits it just right. She started staying late after lessons, claiming she was helping a student with a recital piece. I'd come home to an empty kitchen, her humming replaced by silence, and I'd heat up leftovers alone. When she did return, she smelled different. Not like the lavender soap she loved, but something sharper, muskier. I asked once, casually, and she laughed it off, saying a student's mother had doused her in some cheap perfume as a thank you gift. I nodded, trusting her. Why wouldn't I? Then there was the phone. She'd always left it on the counter, screen up, unbothered by the buzz of texts from parents or friends. But now it lived in her pocket, or she'd tilt it away when I walked by. One night, I caught her smiling at it. A private, glowing smile I hadn't seen in years. "Who's that?" I asked, keeping my tone light. "Oh, just a parent," she said, too quick, her fingers tightening around the case. I let it go, but the crack in the windshield spread. It was mid-May when I met him. I'd stopped by the music store to pick up new strings for her piano. A surprise, since she'd been complaining about a dull tone. There he was, leaning against the counter, chatting with the clerk like he owned the place. Tall, wiry, with a mop of dark hair and a grin that showed too many teeth. "You're Clara's husband, right?" he said, spotting me. I froze. How did he know? "I'm Leo. I play sax with her sometimes. She's a gem, man." His handshake was firm, but his eyes lingered too long, like he was sizing me up. I mumbled something polite and left, the strings forgotten. That night I couldn't sleep. Clara was out again. Another late lesson. I paced the living room, replaying Leo's words, his smirk. A sax player. She'd never mentioned jamming with anyone. The piano was her world, solitary and precise. When she slipped in at midnight, I was waiting. "How was the lesson?" I asked, voice steady. She hesitated, just a beat, then smiled. "Fine. Tiring. You should be asleep, Tom." She kissed my forehead and drifted upstairs. I stayed on the couch, staring at her phone on the coffee table. She'd forgotten it. I didn't touch her phone that night. Not yet. My hands itched too, but some part of me clung to the hope that I was wrong, that the unease gnawing at my gut was just paranoia. Clara slept soundly upstairs, her breaths even, while I sat in the dark, the glow of the streetlight slicing through the blinds. By morning, she was her usual self, humming over coffee, asking if I'd fixed the old Ford yet. The phone was back in her pocket before I could blink. Days bled into weeks and the pattern deepened. Late nights, vague excuses, that musky scent clinging to her like a shadow. I started paying attention, really paying attention. She'd leave her cardigan on the chair sometimes, and I'd press it to my face, searching for clues. Once, I found a single dark hair, too coarse to be hers, tangled in the knit. My chest tightened, but I shoved it down. Evidence, sure, but not proof. Then came the recital. She'd been prepping her students for months, and I showed up early, a bouquet of daisies in hand, her favorite. The auditorium was half full, parents whispering, kids fidgeting in ill-fitting ties. Clara was at the piano, radiant in a green dress I hadn't seen before. She didn't notice me in the back row. Neither did Leo. He slunk in halfway through, sax case slung over his shoulder, and slid into a seat near the stage. When the last kid finished, Clara stood, beaming, and Leo clapped louder than anyone. His eyes locked on her. After I watched them, she didn't see me weaving through the crowd, daisies wilting in my grip. They stood by the piano, too close, his hand brushing her arm as he laughed at something she said. She didn't pull away. I left the flowers on a chair and drove home, the engine's rumble drowning out the storm in my head. That night, she didn't come back until 2 a.m. Recital ran late, she murmured, slipping into bed. I lay still, pretending to sleep, her lie a weight on my chest. The next morning, I broke. She was in the shower, her phone unguarded on the nightstand. My hands shook as I swiped it open. Her passcode was still our anniversary. Texts from Elle filled the screen. "Last night was magic," one read. "Can't wait to play again," said another. Timestamped 1:47 a.m. My vision blurred. I scrolled back weeks, months, even messages layered with private jokes, late-night plans, a language I didn't speak. I set the phone down, bile rising, and waited for her to emerge, towel-wrapped and oblivious. Clara stepped out of the bathroom, steam curling behind her, and froze when she saw me sitting on the bed, her phone in my lap. "Tom." Her voice was small, uncertain. I didn't look up. "Who's Elle?" I asked, my tone flat, like I was reading a grocery list. She didn't answer right away. I heard her breath catch, then the rustle of her towel as she clutched it tighter. "A friend," she said finally, too soft. "A parent." I pressed, echoing her old excuse. She nodded, but her eyes darted to the phone, betraying her. I held it up, screen still lit with Leo's words. "Magic, huh? Late-night recitals must be a blast." Her face crumpled, shock, then guilt, then something harder I couldn't name. "It's not what you think," she started, stepping toward me. I stood, backing away, the phone dropping to the floor with a dull thud. "Don't," I said, sharper than I meant. "Just don't." She stopped, tears welling, but I didn't care. I grabbed my keys and left, the door slamming behind me. I drove aimlessly, the town blurring past the garage, the diner, the park where we'd picnicked as newlyweds. My hands gripped the wheel until my knuckles whitened. Leo, the sax player. I pictured his smug grin, his hand on her arm, and my stomach churned. How long? How many nights had I sat home, trusting, while I pulled into a gas station, the attendant eyeing me warily as I sat there, engine idling, thoughts spiraling. When I got back, she was gone. A note on the counter said, "I'm sorry, I need time." Her car wasn't in the drive, and half her clothes were missing from the closet. I stood there, the silence roaring, and something snapped. Not sadness, rage. Cold, deliberate rage. She thought she could run, leave me to pick up the pieces? No, I'd find her. I'd find them, and they'd pay. I started small. Her phone was still there. She'd left it in her panic. I dug deeper, past the texts, into photos, emails, anything. A selfie of them at some jazz club, her cheek pressed to his, glowed on the screen. Another of her in that green dress, his arm around her waist. Each image was a blade, but I didn't flinch. I saved them all, building my case, my plan taking shape. She'd chosen this. Now I'd choose what came next. The next week was a haze of quiet fury. I didn't call her, didn't text. Let her stew, I thought. Let her wonder what I'd do. I went to work, fixed engines, smiled at customers like nothing was wrong. But every night, I sat at the kitchen table, her phone my map. Leo's number was there, unblocked, unguarded. I traced it online, some free lookup site, and got an address. A rundown apartment 2 towns over. Perfect. I drove there on a Wednesday, dusk settling over the cracked streets. His building was a gray slab, windows flickering with TV light. I parked across the lot, watching. His car, a beat-up sedan with a dented fender, was there. Then hers pulled in. My pulse thrummed as she stepped out, glancing around before slipping inside. I waited, counting minutes. An hour later, they emerged, his arms slung over her shoulders, her laughter cutting through the still air. I snapped photos with my own phone, blurry but clear enough. Evidence. Leverage. Back home, I spread it out, texts, photos, timelines. She wasn't just meeting him. She was living a second life. I found receipts in her email, 2 dinners, motel stays, a weekend trip to the coast I'd thought was a teaching conference. Each discovery fueled me, turning hurt into something sharper, something I could wield. I wasn't ready to confront them yet. No, this needed to be bigger, crueler. They'd built this betrayal in secret. I'd dismantle it in the open. I started with Leo. Small moves. I called his landlord, pretending to be a reference checker, and learned he was late on rent, always. A weak spot. I dug online, found his gigs posted on a local music forum. Sax player for hire, jazz nights, private events. I made an anonymous account and booked him for a fake gig 2 weeks out, some dive bar an hour away. He'd show up, waste his night, lose cash. Petty jab, but it was just the start. Clara was trickier. She'd texted me once, "Can we talk?" But I didn't reply. I knew she'd gone to her sister's place. I'd driven by, seen her car. I didn't need her words yet. I needed her to feel the weight of what she'd done. So I waited, plotted, let the pieces fall into place. Revenge wasn't loud. Not yet. It was a slow burn, and I had time. By the end of the month, I'd turned into someone I barely recognized. The man who'd once fixed Clara's piano bench without her asking was gone, replaced by this shadow, meticulous and unyielding. I kept working, kept smiling, but my nights were for them. For her and Leo. I'd learned their routines. She'd stay at his place 3 nights a week, always after lessons. He'd play gigs or drink at a bar called the Blue Note, her tagging along sometimes, their hands brushing over cheap whiskey. I watched from a distance, invisible, gathering every detail. The fake gig worked. I got a call from a burner phone I'd bought. Leo's voice irritated. "Hey, you the guy from the bar? Where the hell are you?" I hung up, picturing him stranded, fuming. It was small, but it felt good. I upped the ante. Using his email from Clara's phone, I signed him up for every spam list I could find, loan offers, sketchy ads, relentless calls. His phone would buzz nonstop soon. Let him drown in it. For her, I went deeper. She'd always cared what people thought. Her students' parents, the church ladies she chatted with Sundays. I printed the photos, the texts, made copies. Not to send yet, but to hold. I imagined their faces, shock, whispers spreading like wildfire. But that wasn't enough. I needed something personal, something that'd cut her where she'd cut me. Then it hit me, her piano. It was her treasure, an old upright she'd inherited from her grandmother. She'd polish it weekly, play it even when no one listened. I waited until I knew she was with him, then hauled it to the garage. My tools were there, saws, hammers, a sledge. I didn't rush. I took it apart, piece by piece, keys clattering to the floor, strings snapping. The sound was chaos, but it steadied me. When I was done, it was a heap of splintered wood and wire. I piled it in the backyard, doused it with lighter fluid, and struck a match. She came home the next day, unannounced, key trembling in the lock. I was on the couch, calm, the faint smell of smoke lingering. "Tom?" she called, stepping in. Then she saw the backyard through the window, the charred remains. Her scream was raw, guttural, and I met her eyes, unblinking. "You left," I said simply. "So did it." She sank to her knees, sobbing, but I felt nothing. This was just the beginning. Clara didn't leave after the piano burned. She stayed on the floor, tears streaking her face, staring at the ashes through the window like they'd speak back. I didn't comfort her. I didn't move. The air between us was thick, heavy with what we'd both done. Her betrayal, my fire. "Why?" she whispered finally, voice cracked. I shrugged, leaning back on the couch. Seemed fair. She looked at me like I was a stranger, and maybe I was. The old Tom would have apologized, fixed it. This Tom watched her unravel and felt the first flicker of satisfaction. She gathered herself eventually, stood on shaky legs, and left without another word. Her car peeled out, tires squealing, and I knew she'd run to him. Good. Let Leo deal with her mess. I wasn't done with either of them. The piano was personal, a gut punch to her, but it was too small a piece of the puzzle. I wanted them to feel trapped, exposed, like I'd been for months. So I turned back to her phone. Still mine, still a gold mine. I found more than texts this time. Voice memos, buried in a folder she hadn't bothered to delete. Her voice, soft and giddy, talking to him about their spot by the river, how she'd never felt so alive. His laugh, rough and smug, promising her things I couldn't. Nights of music, freedom, a life without grease-stained hands. I listened to everyone, my jaw tight, until the last. Tom doesn't suspect a thing. We're fine. Dated 3 months ago. My grip on the phone tightened until the case creaked. That's when the plan grew teeth. I'd been petty, spam, a fake gig, the piano, but this deserved more. I started with the river spot. I knew it. Hidden off a dirt road, where kids fished and couples sneaked away. I drove there at dawn, the memos looping in my head. Their footprints were still pressed into the mud, a crumpled blanket half buried under leaves. I didn't touch it. Instead, I set up a cheap trail camera, angled it just right, and left. They'd be back, and I'd have proof, not just for me, but for everyone. Days later, I checked it. The footage was grainy but damning. Clara and Leo, tangled together under the stars, oblivious. I saved it, burned it to a drive, and smiled for the first time in weeks. This wasn't about confronting them anymore. This was about ruin. I'd make sure they couldn't hide, couldn't pretend. The town would see, her students' parents would know, and Leo's little jazz world would crumble. But I held off. Timing mattered. I wanted them comfortable, unsuspecting before I struck. Clara came back a week later, banging on the door like she still belonged here. I let her in, silent, watching her pace the living room. "You burned my piano," she said, voice trembling with anger now, not just grief. "My grandmother's piano, Tom. How could you?" I leaned against the wall, arms crossed. "How could you?" I shot back, low and steady. She faltered, eyes darting away, then rallied. "I made a mistake. I'm sorry. Can't we?" "No." I cut her off. "You don't get to walk back in here like it's nothing." She stared, mouth open, then sank onto the couch, hands twisting in her lap. "I'll leave him," she said quietly. "I'll end it." I almost laughed. Leave him? Like that erased the months of lies, the river, the memos? "Too late," I said, turning away. She stayed another hour, pleading, crying, but I didn't budge. When she left, I locked the door behind her. Leo was next. I'd been chipping at him, spam, gigs, but it wasn't enough. I dug deeper, found his landlord's number again. This time, I didn't play nice. I sent an anonymous tip, noise complaints, late-night visitors, anything to get him watched. Then I hit his gigs. I called every venue he'd posted about, pretending to be a concerned patron, hinting at unreliable performers. 2 canceled him within days. I pictured him scrambling, confused, and it fueled me. But Clara's visit lingered. She'd sounded desperate, and desperation made people sloppy. I checked the trail camera again, new footage timestamped 2 nights ago. There they were, arguing this time, her arms flailing, his face twisted. "He knows?" I heard her say, faint but clear. Leo shrugged, pulling her close. "He won't do anything." "Oh, I would." I saved it, added it to the pile. Their confidence was my weapon now. I started crafting the reveal. Printed photos, screenshots, clips from the camera, dozens of copies. I bought envelopes, cheap ones, and mapped out the town. Her students' parents, the church group, the music store clerk who'd seen me that day. Leo's bandmates, his bar buddies. Everyone who mattered to them. I didn't mail them yet. I wanted one more piece, something undeniable, something that'd stick the knife in and twist. Patience, I told myself. It was coming. The waiting was the hardest part. Every day, I went through the motions, work, home, plotting. While the envelopes sat stacked in the garage, a silent promise. Clara stopped calling, stopped showing up, but I knew she hadn't ended it. The camera proved it. Another night by the river, them laughing again, like her visit here never happened. Leo's car stayed parked at his place, her sedan beside it more often than not. They thought they'd won, that I'd crumbled under the piano's ashes. They were wrong. I shifted focus to Leo's weak spots. His landlord called me back. Well, the burner phone, grumbling about that tenant. The tip worked, Leo was on notice. One more slip from eviction. I smiled, imagining him packing his sacks in a hurry. Then I hit his music harder. I found a local jazz blog, posted anonymously about a sax player who flaked on gigs, drank too much, chased married women. No names, but the scene was small. Word would spread. Clara's world was trickier to crack. She'd built it on trust. Parents relied on her. Kids adored her. I couldn't just burn that down without proof they'd believe. The camera clips were gold, but I needed more context, something public. Then I remembered the recital footage. She'd posted snippets online, proud of her students. I checked. Leo was in the background of one, too close, too familiar. I downloaded it, paired it with the river shots, and started editing. A timeline? Undeniable. Ready to share. I tested the waters. Sent one envelope, not to her circle, but to Leo's bar. A grainy still of them by the river, no note. The next night, I drove by the Blue Note. He was there, arguing with the bartender, face red. I couldn't hear, but I didn't need to. The seed was planted. Rumors would grow, and he'd feel the squeeze. Clara would too soon enough. She'd hear whispers, wonder who knew. That night, I dreamed of fire. Not the piano, but their lives smoldering. I woke calm, resolute. The envelopes were ready, addresses penned in block letters. I'd mail them tomorrow, but first I wanted one last look. I drove to the river at midnight, camera in hand. They were there, oblivious, her head on his chest. I didn't record. I just watched, letting the image sear into me. Tomorrow it'd all collapse. Morning broke gray and cold, matching my mood. I stood in the garage, envelopes in a box, each one a grenade with the pin half pulled. I'd spent the night finalizing them. Photos, texts, clips burned to tiny USBs, enough to bury Clara and Leo in their own mess. I drove to the post office before work, hood up, cash in hand. No trace. The clerk didn't blink as I slid the box over, just stamped and sorted. Done. They'd land tomorrow, dozens of eyes peeling back the lie. I didn't go home after the garage. I drove to Leo's instead, parked a block away. His sedan was gone, probably a gig or maybe the bar. Clara's car wasn't there either. I waited, sipping coffee gone cold, until he rolled in at dusk. He looked off, shoulders slumped, sax case dragging. Good. The bar photo had hit. I pictured him fielding questions, brushing off stares. He didn't see me, didn't know the storm coming. Clara called that night. I let it ring, her voice crackling through the machine. Tom, please. We need to talk. Something's wrong. I don't know what's happening. I smirked. She didn't know yet, but she felt it. The edges fraying. I didn't pick up. Let her squirm. By morning, the envelopes would arrive, and wrong would be an understatement. I slept better than I had in months, the weight lifting, replaced by anticipation. Started slow. A text from a coworker. Heard some wild stuff about your wife, man. You okay? I played dumb, shrugged it off at the garage. Then the calls, her sister, furious, demanding answers. I hung up. By noon, my phone buzzed nonstop. Names I barely knew. The church ladies. Parent from her lessons. I silenced it, let them talk. Clara didn't call again. She didn't need to. Her world was imploding, and I'd lit the fuse. I checked the jazz blog later. My post had comments now, guesses, jabs, someone naming Leo outright. Heard he's out at the Blue Note, one said. Messing with a teacher, too? Perfect. I pictured him reading it, sweating, while Clara faced parents pulling kids from lessons. The footage I'd edited, the recital, the river, would seal it. No denials, no excuses. Just truth, raw and public. The fallout hit like a flood. I drove through town the next day, windows down, catching snippets. Whispers at the diner. A glare from the music store clerk. Clara's name floated everywhere. Tangled with Leo's. A scandal no one could ignore. I stopped at the garage, and my boss pulled me aside. Parents called about your wife. Said she's involved with some guy. You holding up? I nodded, kept it vague. We're done, I said, and he didn't push. Her sister showed up at noon, pounding on my door. You're a monster, Tom. Mailing that garbage? She's a wreck. I let her yell, arms crossed, until she stormed off. A wreck. Good. She'd built this. I'd just shown everyone the blueprints. Leo's landlord called the burner. Eviction notice served. Too many complaints, he growled. I thanked him, voice disguised, and hung up. His gigs were drying up too. The blog post spreading like poison. Clara finally came that night, eyes red, hands shaking. You did this? She hissed, stepping inside. You sent those pictures, those videos. Everyone knows. I didn't deny it. You made your choice? I said, calm, leaning on the counter. I made mine. She lunged, slapping me hard, but I didn't flinch. I loved you, she choked out. And you loved him, I replied. She froze, then crumpled, sobbing. I didn't move. She left after midnight, defeated, and I checked the camera one last time. Empty. They were done with the river, done with each other, maybe. I didn't care. The town had swallowed them whole, her lessons canceled, his name mud. But I wasn't finished. The cruelty wasn't in the exposure. It was in the permanence. I'd saved one last card, something to twist the knife deeper. I pulled out her grandmother's ring, Clara's heirloom, left behind in her rush. She'd begged me once to keep it safe. I took it to the garage, fired up the torch and melted it down, watching the gold pool and harden into nothing. I'd mail her the lump tomorrow, no note. Let her feel that loss, final and irreparable, like I had. The morning after Clara's breakdown, I stood in the garage, the lump of melted gold cold in my palm. It wasn't a ring anymore, just a jagged, useless blob, its history erased. I dropped it into a small padded envelope, scribbled her sister's address, where I knew she'd fled, and drove to the post office. No note, no explanation. She'd open it, see the ruin of her grandmother's legacy, and know. I handed it over, paid in cash, and walked out lighter. The town buzzed around me, whispers trailing, but I kept my head down. This wasn't over yet. Leo was unraveling faster than I'd hoped. I'd heard he'd been kicked out. Eviction finalized, his stuff dumped on the curb. A buddy at the garage saw it, laughed about the sax player hauling trash bags to his dented sedan. I drove by that afternoon, slow, catching the chaos. Furniture splintered, clothes scattered, Leo shouting at no one. His car was packed, but he wasn't leaving yet. Good. I wanted him stuck, squirming before the final blow. Clara's lessons were gone. Parents had pulled every kid, her name poisoned now. The church ladies wouldn't even look at her. I heard. Cut her from their circle like a bad stitch. She'd built her life on that trust, and I'd torn it down, brick by brick. I didn't feel guilt, didn't feel much at all. Just a cold hum, like an engine idling, waiting for the next gear. I checked the jazz blog again. Leo's name was a punchline now. Gigs canceled, bandmates ghosting him. Perfect. I went home, sat in the quiet, and pulled out her phone one last time. There was nothing new, no texts, no calls. She'd abandoned it, probably got a new number. But I didn't need it anymore. The damage was done, the evidence spread wide. I crushed it under my boot, grinding the screen to shards, then tossed it in the trash. Clean break. The house felt empty without her humming, without the piano, but I liked it that way. It matched me now. That night, I dreamed of the river. Not them, just the water, dark and endless. I woke with an idea sharp and final. The footage, the photos, the texts, I'd shared them with the town, but not beyond. Leo wanted to play music. Live free? Clara wanted a new life? I'd make sure neither could start over. The internet was forever, and I still had everything. I spent the next day building it, a website simple but brutal. No fancy design, just a black page with their names in bold. Clara and Leo. Below, the timeline, texts, photos, the river clips, even her voice memos captioned with dates. I uploaded it all, every piece I'd collected, and set it live. Anonymous, untraceable, hosted on some cheap server overseas. Then I seeded it. Forum posts, X-threads, jazz groups online. Links dropped with no comment, letting the content speak. By nightfall, it had hits. Strangers commenting, sharing, dissecting their ruin. I pictured Clara finding it, maybe through a friend, her face paling as the views climbed. Leo, too, scrolling on some borrowed phone, seeing his sex dreams dissolve in real time. The town knew, but this was global, anyone could see forever. Employers, future lovers, anyone who Googled them. I leaned back, watching the numbers tick up, a quiet thrill in my chest. This wasn't just revenge. It was a cage they'd never escape. She called the next morning, not from her old number, a new one. I answered, curious. "Tom, take it down," she begged, voice raw. "Please. It's everywhere. I can't. People are calling my sister, my parents." I let her ramble, her panic filling the silence. "You did this to yourself?" I said finally, and hung up. She didn't call back. I checked the site, thousands of views now, spreading like wildfire. Good. Leo surfaced too. A grainy video popped up online, him at a gas station yelling at some guy filming him. "You don't know me," he slurred, swinging wildly. The caption linked my site. I watched it loop, his downfall public, messy. He'd lost the apartment, the gigs, and now his pride. I didn't laugh, didn't cheer. I just nodded, satisfied, and moved to the next step. The gold lump would hit her today, and I wanted one more twist. I drove to the river, dusk settling over the trees. Their spot was empty, the blanket gone, but I didn't care. I brought a sign, wood, painted red, "Clara and Leo's Hideaway." I nailed it to a tree right where the camera had caught them and left. Let the locals find it, let it linger. A monument to their mistake, weathering time while they couldn't. The gold lump landed. I knew because her sister showed up again, furious, shoving the envelope at me. "You're sick?" she spat, tears in her eyes. "She can't stop crying." That was Grandma's. I took it, turned it over in my hands, and shrugged. "She left it behind," I said, tossing it back. She caught it, stunned, then stormed off, cursing me. I didn't flinch. Clara's tears didn't move me anymore. They were hers to drown in. The website kept growing. Tens of thousands of views, comments piling up. "Disgusting," one said. "Poor husband." Another. I didn't care about pity. I cared about reach. It hit a gossip blog, then a bigger one, their names trending briefly online. Leo's sax was for sale on some second-hand site, cheap, desperate. I didn't buy it. Let him lose that too. Clara's sister posted a vague plea on social media, "Leave my family alone." But it backfired, drawing more eyes to the site. I went to work, kept my routine, but the garage buzzed with it. Customers asked, cautious, if I'd seen that page. I nodded, said little. "She's gone," I'd add, and they'd drop it. The town had turned. Clara and Leo were ghosts here now, untouchable. I heard he'd left, crashed with some friend an hour away. She was still at her sister's, hiding. I didn't check. I didn't need to. The damage was done, but I wasn't finished carving. I revisited the river sign a week later. It was still there, weathered but bold, graffiti scrawled on it, "Cheaters" in black marker. I smirked, took a photo, and uploaded it to the site. A fresh wound for them, a trophy for me. Then I mailed one last thing, not to Clara, but Leo. A printout of his sax listing, circled in red, with a note, "Play this." No signature. Let him stew on it wherever he'd landed. That night, I sat in the backyard, the piano's ashes long swept away. The silence was mine now, not hers. I'd burned her world down, piece by piece, and scattered the rest online. It wasn't joy I felt, just completion. One more move, I decided. One final twist to bury them for good. I waited a month, let the dust settle. The website hummed along, views steady, their names etched into the digital ether. Leo was off the grid, rumor said he'd moved states, chasing gigs that wouldn't come. Clara stayed with her sister, a shadow of herself, I heard. Parents wouldn't take her calls, shamed by the fallout. I'd won, but victory felt hollow without a capstone. So I dug one last time, found the perfect end. Her students. The kids she'd taught, the ones who'd loved her. I'd kept their parents' numbers from her phone, a list I hadn't touched. Now I did. I wrote letters, not angry, not crude, just cold. Clara's not who you thought. She betrayed us all. Here's proof. Links to the site, a few stills enclosed. I mailed them one by one to every family. Let the kids ask, let the parents explain. Her legacy with them, her pride, would rot too. The response was swift. A mother called, voice shaking. My daughter idolized her. How could she? I didn't answer, just listened as she vented, then hung up. Others texted, furious, heartbroken. One kid, little Emma, I remembered her, sent a drawing to the house. Clara's face, crossed out in red. I pinned it to the fridge, a quiet metal. Clara would hear, feel that loss cut deeper than the piano, the ring. Leo got his own finale. I tracked his Saks listing, it sold dirt cheap. I found the buyer online, a collector, and sent an anonymous package. The river footage, his eviction notice photocopied. A note. This came with it. The guy posted it, confused, linking the site again. Leo's name flared up, fresh humiliation tacked to his failure. Wherever he was, he'd know escape wasn't an option. I checked the river sign one last time. It was gone, torn down, probably by some local fed up with the drama. Didn't matter. This ghost lingered like everything I'd done. I drove home, the town quiet now, my part played. Clara and Leo were broken, scattered, and I was still here, whole in a way they'd never be again. Spring faded into summer, the air thick with heat. The house stayed empty, just me and the echoes of what was. I didn't rebuild, didn't get a new couch, didn't fix the scorched patch in the yard. Felt right, a scar I could live with. The website ticked on, a monument I rarely checked anymore. It had done its job. Clara and Leo were footnotes now, their lives shredded beyond repair. I saw her once, months later, at the grocery store. She didn't see me. Head down, hair dull, pushing a cart alone. She looked small, fragile. Nothing like the woman who'd laughed with Leo by the river. I didn't approach. Didn't need to. The gold lump, the letters, the site, they'd spoken for me. She paid, left, and I watched her go. A stranger I'd once loved. Leo's trail went cold. A guy at the garage said he'd heard the sax player was bussing tables somewhere down south. No music left in him. I nodded, unbothered. His ruin was complete. Evicted, shunned, stripped of his swagger. I'd taken everything he'd used to steal her, and more. The note with his sax sale was my last word. He'd carry it like a weight. The town moved on, mostly. Whispers faded, replaced by new gossip. Someone's affair. A kid's arrest. My name stayed clean, the wronged man who'd fought back. Customers tipped better. Co-workers clapped my shoulder. I didn't bask in it. I worked, ate, slept, lived. The rage was gone, burned out with the piano, the ring, their lives. What lingered was calm, a stillness I'd earned. I stood in the backyard one night, stars sharp overhead. The ashes were long gone, grass creeping over the spot. I didn't miss her, didn't hate her. She'd chosen, I'd answered, and the scales balanced. The river flowed on, the website hummed, and I was free. Not happy, maybe, but free. That was enough.